Today I'll be bringing you into the biggest roundtable discussion in the history of philosophy. Here with me today are the three most famous philosophers of all time: Immanuel Kant, Jeremy Bentham, and Socrates. Our topic this morning will be Radnor School lockers. Let's begin. When we enter the school building, what is a reasonable expectation of privacy? Given the differing nature of an educational environment and our personal home life, is the enforcement of an indisputed right of privacy consistent? We are expected to abide by social contracts that we never partook in creating. During this talk, we will be focusing on the right of the school to infringe on our privacy in the form of searching our lockers. The morality of this situation may be argued both ways.
Well, before any of us can voice our opinion on such a topic, we need to first discuss the purpose and functionality of a locker. The purpose of a locker is for people to store their personal items privately, so that they don't have to go through all the hassle to carry dozens of items in their arms. But we might store more than just work in there. Some people like to stuff personal or private possessions in their lockers, some things they may not be comfortable showing their classmates. In that case, students value their lockers because they know they're safe from public embarrassment when they lock their objects in their lockers.
Furthermore, excuse the interruption, the locker is a protection mechanism. As a student enters into a public area, he needs a place where he can safely store his private possessions. This frees people from having to worry about the safety of their possessions. In essence, it is a freedom given to students to sustain their sense of privacy while in school, and personally, I believe that it is an obligation of the school to sustain this right.
I would believe similarly to Bentham on the function of the locker, Kant on the protection concept. However, I would also like to propose a different question. What moral value or what personal right can be represented through a locker? In my response to the first proposition, the moral value associated with lockers is the person's preservation of their own personal life. A place in which the storage of the item is not influenced by an authority, but dictated by his or her moral beliefs. There's an undeniable morality in sustaining your private and personal beliefs, all which can be done through a use of an item as simple and as humble as a locker. By keeping yourself free of the authority-enforced notion that you must submit yourself and your items, you can carry out a certain justice which benefits both parties of the situation.
And what might this justice of ours encompass?
Let us use a hypothetical to further clarify. Suppose there is an 11th grade student named Sam Pete. Let us also suppose that he had his locker completely under siege by school administration because they suspected that what he was holding in his locker were drugs. Perhaps the school's defense of this search would be that he acted in a strange manner in which the influence of drugs would be a rational or reasonable suspicion. Let us further assume that they break into his locker and search through all his belongings, some of which are highly personal. In the process, the administration would confiscate his iPad, his books, his backpack, and his personal journals, which were stored in his locker. Following this thorough search through every item, might we say, personal or not, the administration found nothing illegal in his locker. Might we also add during this entire process that Pete was putting up a relentless fight against this search, quite possibly out of embarrassment for his personal items, or that he felt he was faced with a genuine injustice. It was only until the staff forced his lock open that they discovered its contents. In either case being, he dissented as best he could to the authority, advocating against what he thought was a particular injustice. You see, Sam's refusal to conform to what he assumed was wrongdoing was a virtuous deed in itself. It contributed the necessary questioning of authority that helps propel future progression in laws.
With all due respect, Socrates, your view is only legitimate based on the fact that he is innocent. What if in another scenario he actually held an illegal or endangering substance? What then? I believe that the school, given the fact that Sam was acting suspicious and the possibility that he could have caused greater pain, took steps in ensuring the avoidance of pain, something I think is moral. Given the correct calculation of good and bad, compromising one person's privacy or individual rights is a worthy sacrifice if it ensures the safety and happiness of the majority.
I'm sorry to inform you of this, but Jeremy, you're wrong. Whether Sam is guilty or not has no bearing on the morality of this intrusion of his privacy, because there is no scenario where infringing on somebody's privacy is okay. This kind of societal rule is what we refer to as a categorical imperative. Since privacy is a universal policy, society should never permit these intrusions. Additionally, by letting the school break into Sam's locker due to reasonable suspicion of a dangerous substance, his rights are not being respected. The school administration is making Sam an instrument of potential happiness for the entire school, and this does not account for the rights that belong to him.
But what if the stakes were higher? What if Sam Pete was accused of a more sinister intent than the aforestated hypotheticals imply? In my added variation, let's say he is accused of having brought a gun to school and potentially starting a serial attack. You must be okay with the school sacrificing his privacy and his rights for the prevention of mass harm to others, would you not?
No, actually, the whole point behind the categorical imperative is that it applies to all circumstances. Whether there are Cheerios or a bomb in Sam's locker, it would be a bad universal policy to allow the school to invade his privacy. If we allowed this, there could be random locker searches on an hourly basis for all we know. Would this be worth it?
Wow, a very demanding take on this. However, I'd like to add something important, something essential in expanding our perspective. So far, all we have been revolving our ideas around are the injustice that the individual faces. But what about the majority? What about the laws? What about the authority? Can't injustice affect more than just an individual? He claimed that our rights are waived without our students' approval. Agreeable or not?
Any individual who reaps the benefits of a school, understands the conditions given, and is aware of the alternatives yet continues at that school, implies an approval, despite the fact that each student has signed every year to the handbook contract. And while education is mandatory by law, public education or public schooling is not important. If you so passionately disagree with the school's locker rules, then take advantage of homeschooling or a different alternative. Deliberate disregard of laws degrades the school's authority. The school is responsible for a large portion of your education, so to disrespect the same system that has been benefiting you all this time would be nonsensical. So, even for the students who do dissent, accept the consequences with pride. If Pete gets in trouble for not wanting to open his locker, then he should know what is to follow.
Hey guys, I don't mean to interrupt, but we are running out of time and we're on a very strict time limit. So out of my own curiosity, I would like to ask, what would you think if during the locker search for a weapon, Pete's journal was searched or read in order to find a specific intention?
Once again, as I have tirelessly stressed throughout this conversation, his feelings or rights are a minuscule cost compared to the people's lives. By putting lives at stake, you also put their future happiness and pleasure at stake. The logical calculations can only lead to one conclusion: do whatever is necessary to Sam Pete if it increases the chance of a greater quantity of happiness.
Oh, well, I suppose this conflict can never be resolved if the definition of morality differs between us. You believe morality to be the quantity, whereas I believe it to be based on individuals' freedom. The circumstances are important in deciding morality because there is a line that could never be crossed.
Anywho, to address Eugene's scenario, the school obviously maintains the right to, as from the quoted from the school handbooks, which states that the contents of the lockers cannot be or will be confiscated if they are searched. So, although they uphold the authority to confiscate and search through a student's items, the student is also obliged to refuse and argue if his personal feelings or his personal sense of justice instruct him to. On the condition that he does, he should accept the consequences as to preserve the school's integrity out of respect for the very system which educated him.
That's all the time we have for today. It was an interesting experience to witness some of the greatest human minds collaborate on a subject as humble as a school locker. We wish you all the best. Thank you.